Hello and welcome to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast, where today is part 2 of our conversation with very worshipful brother Norman Mcevoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our opinions and thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions, either here on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We'd also appreciate a thumbs up and especially any comments on our videos.
Thank you for coming to the Working Tools Masonic Podcast. I'm Matthew Apple, a Mason down here in Washington, along with my colleague, very worshipful brother, Stephen Colbeth, here in Grand Lodge of Washington. And we also have with us two of our brothers to the north, who are our usual hosts, Brother Connor Massey and worshipful brother Stephen Chung of the Grand Lodge of British Columbia in the Yukon. And we have our special guest with us, very worshipful brother Norman Mcevoy, also up in British Columbia. Welcome.
Thank you very, very much. It's an honor to be invited.
We're just glad to have such a erudite person as yourself. Connor, you said you had a question that you'd like to ask?
So Norman, at the end of our last segment, we were discussing your book and how it is a guide and a manual as in respects to what it is to be a Mason. And you were talking about the significance that you felt on the second degree. And just before we ended, you left us with a really interesting picture of the guard at the bottom of the stairs. And I was wondering if you could expound upon that a little bit more, and if we could explore what that means to you and go from there.
Well, it's near and dear to my heart, as we had a little chat this morning. To me, the second degree in Freemasonry is that's the meat and of the entire joining of Freemasonry. I think of the candidate finds himself at the bottom of a staircase. There's a guard in front of them, and there's a pond with water, and there's also a field of wheat. And we are told that in our introductions, that this is his, I don't know that the word of journey is actually, but he is ascending a staircase of 3, 5, and 7. Am I correct?
Okay.
So he is starting to climb those staircases. Now he is given tools. He's given he's given mathematical signs, he's given philosophical signs, he's given thoughts to ponder. Brotherly love, relief, and truth. Things of this nature. As he moves through those steps, and I think of that as when you master those steps and going through life. So you master this far, you master that far, then you have this third and final step of mastering what Freemasonry is all about, what it's trying to teach, etc., etc., etc. From a philosophical standpoint, you're reading and you're absorbing. And then your attempt then is to reach that upper chamber. That's heaven to me. That is where that is. So you achieve by climbing the steps. Okay? Am I okay here? You know, I haven't left anybody following along. It's a winding staircase, and so is life. And to me, if my objective is to be in this place called heaven, this is me. This is the messages that I am learning. that I need to be able to understand what I'm doing as I go through life. Brotherly love, relief, and truth. These are all on the staircase as you go north, or as you go to the top. So to me, that is telling me how, okay, to do what I need to do. Okay? It even explains to me why. But when you get to the explanation, generally in a lodge room, of an explanation of the fellowcraft tracing board, the individual who is doing the explanation doesn't know himself. And it's treated, in my mind, as almost, we've got to do this. It's going to take maybe, it's not long, it's going to be maybe half an hour, okay? Instead of the depth of what you're learning. Okay? And to me, then, the third degree is a demonstration of what happens to a man who lived up to the principles that he took. He died, right, rather than betray the trust that was placed in him. First degree tells you what Freemasonry is, who we are, where we're going, da 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 da. But to me, the lesson, the way to live your life as a Freemason is all within the second degree. And I know people will argue with me about that. I know, it's got nothing there. They're just not digging deep enough. They're not understanding, and the person who is teaching them doesn't understand it either. So it just goes on and on and on. They mispronounce the words. There's things that you notice. So to me, that is where and to me, where the book all came up, A Journey to the Spirit. Okay? That is what it's all about. We are taught in Freemasonry that if we live our lives in a certain way, that there's a better chance for us getting there than without. Okay? We learn to love our neighbors, ourselves. We live to be considerate. We live to learn to be, even the sciences are pointed out to us in that degree. But how many people could quote me? I'm here. So,
Norm, do you have any idea? You mentioned early on in your Masonic career that you had the American work. The U.S. or the Washington work, if you will? You actually on the phone? You mentioned you're a member of Port Angeles Lodge.
I am an honorary life member of Port Angeles Lodge.
So, do you know Washington work, and is it significantly different than Canadian than what you would consider Canadian work?
I hope you're not going to laugh at me when I tell you this, but I call the American work ABE. Okay, anything but English. And it was written by a man by the name of Webb.
Yeah.
It got then known as American work. And when it came north, okay, with the miners, they didn't like the word American all part of this because we're now in Canada, so they started to call it ancient. So it is ancient work today.
Right.
And to me, it is the work is wonderful. It's mostly exactly the same as presented in what we'd call emulation work or Canadian work or Australian work. Exactly the same. Only it's got a way more bells and whistles. And you get the fellowcraft that are sent out to find. And they get them all dressed up in his tuxes and his bow ties, and away you go. I wanted to be one of those.
We do it upright at Prince Charles, that's for sure.
The message is the same, is the delivery. And the delivery, to me, my God, wow. Wow. They want me to be one of those with my tux.
The delivery, that's what makes the difference, right?
See, it's just, but when I am now a member of Haida Lodge, which does the American work, and I enjoy it, but I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm looking at it not as a 20 or whatever it was. I think I was maybe 50 or 60 at that time. But I enjoy it. And particularly the third degree. Particularly the third degree. When the whole ceremony of finding the burial, I think it's fabulous because it stays with you. It's got color.
Now, as longtime listeners of the podcast will know, because I did take that rather lengthy hiatus, I am an officer of 2 lodges here in British Columbia, being Henderson Lodge number 84, my mother lodge, which is an emulation or English working lodge, and Asher Lodge number 3, which is an ancient or American or anything but English working lodge.
He's got the best of both worlds.
So I have been able to experience both. I've memorized both. I'm actually, during COVID-19, I've been working on memorizing the 3 prove-ups in the ancient ritual because I'm a masochist apparently. But I've really gotten to explore the 2 different rituals, and I totally agree with what Norman is saying. How it gets to the same point, it just kind of gets there differently.
I like listening to lecturers. Inevitably, if they don't know what they're saying, they'll mispronounce a word. And so this is what I think to myself, what bothers me. It doesn't annoy me. It just bothers me because not enough time is being spent by the coaches, by the sponsor, by whoever. And probably some of it is because they didn't learn it themselves. So you can't teach what you don't know. And I think this, when I'm talking about, it's almost like a culture. I mean, oh, well, don't worry about it. We're putting on the fellowcraft degree. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And it is the big deal.
Well, like you and I spoke the other day, and you can really tell the difference when someone has spent the time to learn and understand it. It affects their cadence and the delivery of what they're presenting, and
it's wonderful.
And it makes the real difference in delivery.
When you get a person that you're fortunate enough to listen to him and follow, and he's got a little bit of artistic or a little bit of drama that he's putting into it. That's worth going 2 and 3 and 4 times because you're getting the message. That's about it. So one of the things I found, I was doing some presentations. I've been invited out, and I do with the Journey to the Spirit, and I ask the people in the lodge room, "Are you a spiritual person?" And I get some really peculiar looks. What do you mean? I said, well, what was the first question you were asked when you came into the lodge room?
Yeah. In whom do you put your
In all
trust?
cases of difficulty and distress, in whom do you place your trust? And what did you say? Well,
like the rest of us, in God, of course.
Well, so I said, God. And I said, well, so you've just declared yourself to be a spiritual person. Well, I didn't think of it that way.
One of our past masters had a little different story. He was fortunate that his dad was the master of the lodge when he was made a Mason. And, of course, his dad comes to him and says, in whom do you put your trust? And he said, well, in you, Dad. He goes, no, higher. He goes, Mom. He goes, no, higher. oh, God.
Oh, you could make a pantomime out of that. That's wonderful.
And you, Dad, higher. Mom, well, we know who's getting fed tonight.
So this was a young fellow I was talking to. He was from the Philippines, and it was over in Surrey. And I said, well, why did you want to become a Mason? He said, really very important people in the Philippines are Masons, and I got to be a Mason. Okay. I remember a man I got to know, I'm not going to say really well, but he worked with one of the telephone companies. and he was a supervisor and so forth. Tough getting up there. So before we knew it, the lodge that he belonged to had 4 or 5 new candidates. Guess where from? You know, I don't know. I'm talking now about the acceptance of a petition for membership. How do we know if we don't ask very pointedly, very directly, why do you want to be a Freemason? There was a car dealership, I know. The man has since sold, but I remember being out and talking with him, what very popular man in Victoria. And you couldn't really be on his premises unless you were a Freemason.
I mean, I obviously joined Freemasonry for the free gas, no taxes, controlling the world. I didn't get any of them. I got you 3, and of course my friend Norm. But I think that's a fair trade, you know.
You see, it's...
My friend always asked me, he said, David, I just want to know who the next president's going to be.
Well, you know, and here I joined because they told me I could control the weather.
You could control the weather.
I hadn't heard
Yeah.
that.
And how were you going to do that?
I don't know, but they said the Masons had the power.
Had the power.
If we could control the weather, it would be much nicer in Victoria today.
You know,
Well, I was excited.
Do you know if Donald Trump is a Mason, by any chance?
I do not believe he is.
You mentioned the second. Here's a segue. You mentioned the second degree. I love the second degree too, and as you know, we're not giving away too many secrets here, but one of the spots I thought here we get to learn the wages, and we finally get to hear, you know, see the jewel, you know, and
you arrive at the top of the staircase,
right? And there's no money.
But it's Freemasonry can be so beautiful.
It is,
and some of the degrees in Royal Arch are also very, very lovely.
Yeah,
and because to me, you can't really complete your Masonic journey without all the tools, and you can't get the rest of the tools until you go into the Holy Royal Arch.
I think, Norm, I think you and I are the only 2 Royal Arch Masons in this group.
Ooh.
Are you a Royal Arch Mason, Dave?
I am. I've not made my mark officially, but I've been through the degrees.
It's, you know, where that answers questions. In other words, at the very end of the 3rd degree, you're told that the word was lost. Okay? Word was not lost. Think about it. The word was shared by 3 people. 1 died. The word was not lost. The problem was that 2 people needed a 3rd person to share with. And they went out and found him. And that's what the Holy Royal Arch is all about. Your journey's not complete.
So, to segue into a different topic, I know that in the green room, we were discussing the chronology of Freemasonry. I think, Dave, you had a specific question about that?
Well, I not necessarily a specific question so much as that we were chatting, Norm, when I phoned you the other day, and what actually prompted the request to have you on the show. I was forwarded an email from another brother, and so just so you know that it's your newsletter and the propagation is effective. And so the email that was forwarded, though, had a comment about your post on the chronology, as Connor said, and I was fascinated with the chronology that you put together. In 15 minutes or less, or 10 minutes or less, can you talk about how you put that together?
Okay, well, I don't believe in luck. Okay, so those words sort of go away. And I was hunting through something, and I found a chronology. So I thought, oh, that's okay. and I think it was somebody in the United States that had done some work on it. Then I found a chronology that was done in Great Britain. So I had the old story, I had nothing better to do. So I started putting this together. I ended up with 15 pages. So then bits and pieces. Then I started to share that a little bit. And then I started getting prompted. Oh, no, that was the wrong date. And I would be getting this because I shared it in The Educator. In fact, it's back in The Educator. Okay. So I have been prompted now by a fellow out of Nova Scotia. He says I've got about 4, maybe 5 mistakes. Okay, so now I got to go back and work on this. But it takes you right back to literally to Adam and Eve, and takes you to the Queen's coronation in England. And it is totally Great Britain, particularly England. Okay? So the reason being that to start to try to put something like that together for 52 states in the United States of America and try to talk about all of the things that happened when the British left, okay? And it would be enormous. It would be enormous. And so I just decided, no, I'm going to leave it for where the foundation of Freemasonry is and work from there. So it's about 15 pages. Yeah. And if anybody sees that I've done something wrong or that they got something that they would like to add, all they got to do is let me know, and I add it in. I had it in The Educator, so you could go in and click on it if you wanted it. Few people did. And then I was talking to my guru, and he says, well, I said, what about this? Do you think I should put that in the body of The Educator? And he said, sure, why not? So it is now literally on the front page of The Educator. Click in, read it, print it, do what you want with it. But it's an idea, it goes all the way back to the Regis document, way, 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 way back. And so it's the foundation.
That's great. I'm looking at it now. Have you thought about expanding on it and giving commentary on some of those dates?
I wasn't there. Oh, I can't talk about something I don't know. I could
He's old, but he's not that old, David.
I'm a little slow.
More
your research, what you found out, not necessarily your personal experience.
About a man like Charles I and Robert Murray, which is a lovely, lovely situation. Robert Murray was Robert Murray was a Scotsman and a minister, Presbyterian church, and he bet on the wrong horse as to who was going to win between Mary Queen of Scots and Charles. So he got his ass, he lost, ended up in France, became a marvelous friend of a man by the name of Richelieu, Cardinal of Richelieu, and he did all sorts of things. When Charles I was invited to come back after Cromwell's death, he jumped on those strings. Okay? But in the meantime, he had been building in Europe what we would call the continental degrees. And if you looked at somebody like Napoleon Bonaparte, you would see medals and everything, clothes of ermine and so. It became a big thing in Europe to belong to something like that. Okay? Continental degrees. Today you know them as the American work. Okay? Continental degrees. So 30 or more of them. So we're talking about, you're talking about the 32, 33 degrees.
Scottish
That's where it came from.
Yeah.
So if you try to follow and put, if that happened there, why? How did it happen? So you'll see over here, the Roman Catholic Church is getting kicked out, and who's coming in, and who's there? Right? Why? The silly things. When you wanted to be a crusader, okay, and go down and with the Roman Catholic Church and possibly get killed on your way, okay, you signed your property over to the Roman Catholic Church in the event of your death. So the Roman Catholic Church ended up owning something like 3/4 of all the property in England.
Wow.
Right? So you were wondering why they get pissed off when along comes, right, our friend William of Orange and says, no, you're not going to do that. Henry VIII steps in, he says, no, you're not going to do that. And they said, oh, because we won't give you a divorce? Go to hell. There's a reason for this. We don't want you. We want our land back. Go away. So when you're looking at the chronology, you can see the events falling together. What happened? Okay, well, that was when Cromwell was there. You know, everything happened. Well, how did that happen up in Scotland? Well, because when you start to put the pieces together, you start to get the history, and you start to see cause and effect, and you'll see that in the chronology. And there's some wonderful books.
I think we could do a whole show. Maybe we could talk Matt and let us using his unlimited Zoom. We could have you just start at the beginning and talk about
It's a very good place to start. You know, there's a little song that goes about that. I get quite emotional about it because I find the little things. So you find this little thing that fit into that little thing, and all of a sudden you're starting to see something clearer. I mean, why? For instance, Murray. He was born in Aberdeen, but he became Moray because he spent some time in France, I guess. But he was a leader.
Norman, one of the things that I find most spectacular about you is someone needs only to spend maybe 5 minutes with you.
With me?
And then they realize how passionate you are about Freemasonry. It puts the four of us to shame.
Oh, that's
how passionate you are.
I am frequently told I just talk too damn much, but and that's the truth. Because the Irish are known for the gift of the gab. But but it's a wonderful, wonderful way of life, and we shortchange it. And and I wasn't kidding about the idea of ABE, because when the British troops and all the rest of their troops got kicked out of the United States of America, they wanted their own thing. What the hell do we want the English for? We don't need them anymore. And all of a sudden along comes Webb, and he's got the ritual that came around the horn. Shit, we got an answer. Think about it, guys. We have our own. So what should we call it? Well, you can call it Webb because that's after me, because I did it, right? But then they get out towards California and somebody says, who the hell is Webb? And why are we buying this? So why don't we call it American?
You know, I've really enjoyed these episodes, Norman, and I certainly hope we can get you to come back on and do another episode with us. I'm sure with the widespread knowledge you've got in that brain of yours, we could probably do several episodes on several
I love every minute of it, and I hope I wouldn't be boring you.
Not at
Absolutely
all.
not.
And I, we're going to be putting a Journey to the Spirit together, particularly the second degree. And if any of you gentlemen would like a copy now, as to where it sits now, you're more than welcome.
I emailed you it. I emailed you at the beginning of this asking for that.
Well, on that note, so
can I contribute to the cost of this?
So far we're doing everything on the cheap. We talk about spending money once in a while, but we haven't.
No, if there's any money involved here, I'd like to participate.
Oh well, thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
You see, Norman, this podcast was founded by Steve and I. I'm Scottish Irish, and Steve is
Nice guy.
So we don't spend.
And I'm Chinese, Scottish, and Irish.
We just don't. What's this notion of spending money? I've never heard of this concept.
Yeah. However, we are going to go out and try and raise some money and get a paid subscription to Zoom.
Well, I tell people I arrived in Canada with, I think, $15 in my pocket, and I had a job, and I went to the job. And the other cute one was I was living in Kelowna, and a young fellow from Demolay, where I was helping, introduced me to his sister. Okay, and 2 weeks later, I asked her to marry me. And that's only 6 years ago.
Well,
another Demolay Joby story, eh?
Another Demolay. Well, she was never a Joby, but
I think
well,
this is a fantastic segue to bring this wonderful discussion to a close. Norman, as we've already said, I've known you for years, and it's always a pleasure to get to talk to you.
I remember visiting his house when he wasn't. I think he might have been 4 months old.
I still had a beard and wore a bow tie every day.
And his father was very, very proud, and he still is.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you, very worshipful Brother Norman, for being on the show today and our previous episode. And as was said earlier, we'd love to have you back sometime.
I'm a past grand first principal. So.
And for all those who may have missed it the first go round, the website is TheEducator. That's 2 E's, one in the and one in educator.ca. And we encourage you all to go out there and
anytime at DNYBOY at Shaw, Danny Boy. That's easy. All the other ones relate to the educator, but if you simply look at one, what the hell is that? Should there be a da-da? Danny Boy, it's my license plate. DNYBOY at Shaw.ca. Gets me anytime.
And thank you very much again, very worshipful sir.
Nothing.
And we look forward to hearing from you again.
My thrill and an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
My pleasure. God bless.